So I hope you've all found a nice glass of bubbly or something else and a comfortable spot to sit or stand on, and that you're ready to welcome our first speaker tonight. Lisa used to work as a scientific assistant at the Cognitive Developmental Research Unit, ECUP, here at the department, where her focus was specifically on investigative interviews of sexually abused children. She now works as a researcher at the National Centre for Suicide Research and Prevention, also at the University of Oslo. Her presentation tonight is about the quality of investigative interviews with sexually abused children conducted during criminal investigations. She spent 3 years researching this topic as an assistant for PhD candidate Miriam Jonsson. Despite so far having focused her career on such gloomy topics as child sex abuse and suicide, Lisa is really not morbid at all, but quite a happy, life-loving person. Now please give her a warm welcome. Here's Lisa Victoria Burrell. The stage is yours.
I first became interested in witness psychology during my bachelor's degree when I read Svein Magnussen's infamous book. He was my hero. And also, being a crime buff runs in my family. My twin sister is a criminologist, and the family always gathers around for some quality time watching murders on TV. I was especially interested in child witnesses because of the potential impact this research may have on society. So when I first started to work on the project that I'll be telling you about today, I just couldn't believe my luck. I was going to work with sexual abuse of children. And when I tell people about this research, they often say that children must be bad witnesses. But if there's one thing that I need you to get out of this presentation today, it's that the quality of an interview of a sexually abused child is first and foremost dependent on the interviewer, not the child. We know that children's memories are less detailed and less accurate than adult memories, and we also know that children are more influenced. But children are also capable of very accurate, very detailed memories. So since we know that children are more influenced than adults, the framing of the interview and the questions being asked are very important. The questions asked and how they are asked defines the quality of the interview. So this was what we wanted to look at. So there are good questions and bad questions. The best question is an open-ended invitation. Tell me everything that happened. Another good question is a directive question, typically the who, what, when, where questions. The bad questions, however, can lead the children astray and distort their memory. The worst question is a suggestive question. Typically, he touched your private parts, didn't he? Another bad question is a forced choice question, such as a yes-no question. In recent decades, there have been great investment in order to improve the quality of child interviews. We have seen training manuals, regulations, barnehus, but has this actually had an effect? And this was what we wanted to look at. So we gathered a representative sample of all child interviews in sexual abuse cases in Norway from 1990 to 2012. That's a 22-year period. And then we coded the questions: open-ended, directive, forced choice, or suggestive. But first, we just had a look at the interviews we had collected. And to no surprise, we saw that the vast amount of suspected abusers were men. We saw the opposite pattern in the victims, however, that 76% of victims were female. We also saw that almost half of the sexual abuse cases occurred within the family. So there were few cases where the child and perpetrator were unknown to each other beforehand. And this is quite discouraging, since we know that children are less inclined to disclose abuse the better they know the perpetrator. We also saw that the younger the child, the more suggestive the interviewing. So since younger children are less verbal, the interviewers probably had to drag the information out of them. as we do. But in this context, that's a very bad tactic. And when we look at the different questions that can be asked, we see that only 2% of the questions were the good open-ended invitations. However, 13% of questions were the suggestive, leading, worst questions. And when we looked at these questions over the 22-year period, we saw that we had more or less stagnated. We saw no difference over time in the worst suggestive questions and the best open-ended questions. No change over 22 years. When we, however, looked at the other two question types, we saw that the forced choice questions had decreased slightly and the directive questions had increased slightly. So this is good news. But compared to the no change in the best and worst question categories that I just told you about, this isn't good enough. We're not reaching our full potential. So we still have a very long way to go. This was not the results we were hoping for, and it was very discouraging. We found that children's legal security is still as poor today as 22 years ago when it comes to the question categories. So this was very discouraging. And the ironic thing about this is that these types of interviews are not legally defensible. They cannot inform the police or the prosecution about what actually happened, and they cannot be used as good evidence in court. So this is actually the worst type of self-handicapping imaginable. But of course, we're not the only country where this trend has been seen. This has been seen almost worldwide, from Sweden to Australia, Canada, US, UK. So obviously, we know what to do, but there's a problem with implementing it in practice. But there is hope. We did see some interviews with a very high quality. And we also know that intensive training over long periods of time increases the quality of the interview and the quality of the interviewer. So I'm not saying that this is easy. And I'm not saying that the police have an easy job to do. I've done a lot of child interviews myself, and it's very difficult. For example, what would you do in your first interview ever? 5 minutes into the interview, the child starts jumping up and down on his chair, screaming, "If you like to play Super Mario 2. I was at a loss. Thank you.